The Nadu fiasco of recent weeks has inspired Mark Rosewater himself to post on his blogatog. As we can see here, he titles it The Nadu Situation. He says, "This has become a big topic in the community this week, so I wanted to add my thoughts to the discussion. My focus is not on the banning, but on the behind-the-scenes processes that led to it. I'm the head designer, so I want to focus on the design elements of the situation. When we make Magic, there are a few things we can do to try to make the best it can be. First, we design it in a way what we call an iterative loop. That is, we make something, we play test it, we get feedback, we make changes on the feedback, and begin the next iteration of the loop. We try to get as many iterative loops in as we can before the set is locked, aka no more changes. No matter where we set that line, there's a last day to make changes. Moving that line earlier doesn't change anything other than give us less iterative loops to improve things. Also, we make lots and lots of last-minute changes. The vast majority of them make the game better. I understand there's more focus on the times we make a mistake, but it represents a truly small percentage of the changes." And as we can see here, Mark Rosewater says that they make roughly 50 changes per... Yes, right here on the tweet. A lot of people have asked, here's the stat. In the last week of sets, we on average make 30 to 50 mechanical changes. And they only have to ban a card once every 3 to 4 years, give or take. So that's a pretty good track record by the numbers. Moving on the blog post here, he says, "Also, whenever we design a card, we ask ourselves, who is this card for? If we're trying to make the best game, the game the best it can be, it helps to understand who will use the card, where they will use it, and what they will do with it. Obviously, in a game as modular as Magic, the players can often zig when we expect them to zag, but in general, this process leads to the best design. We have two play design teams, one focused on competitive play, one focused on casual play. The competitive play design teams determine which cards they think have a shot in competitive, and vice versa for casual. Remember, we're making predictions as where we think the environment might go. We don't definitively know. We need to make the environment complex enough as to entertain tens of millions of players. The casual play design team then looks at the cards that don't play a competitive role to see what casual role they can play. And these two teams, I assume, have some sort of interfacing with each other. And there perhaps is some sort of communication or workflow between them. I don't know. I don't work for Wizards. So here we go. Here's the first big section here. He says, "Stop designing for Commander." He's responding to all the community outpouring and outrage on social media about that. And so part of this is the response to the post from Wizards that's explained why they designed Nadu for Commander. And so Mark Rosewater says, "The nature of competitive formats is that only so many cards can be relevant." And actually, this was discussed in one of his recent Drive to Work podcasts. I believe it was 1158 Power Level, where he talks about how, and I could have the wrong number here, but in any case, there's a recent podcast where Mark Rosewater talks about how there are only a certain number of cards that are viable in any given constructed format, standard, modern, etc. So if Wizards prints continually overpowered and power-crept cards, they're going to, by definition, boot out cards previously. So they can't actually print a set with 300 power-crept cards. That's just not going to happen. And therefore, we get cards like Nadu that are intended to be used as more of like a casual draw-in to draw in more fans from a variety of different Magic formats. They can't design a Modern Horizons set, for example, that only has modern playable cards, because that would destroy Modern. And actually, people complain about Modern as it is, in the sense that Modern Horizons, quote-unquote, rotates the format by putting so many staples in already. And so putting in a few casual draws like Nadu, which they tried to do, which was this was a big mistake, but they tried. This allows them to not overprint staples like Ragavan in Modern. And so there's a reason that they appeal to different players in every set. They don't want to make a set that totally rotates the format by itself. Like Modern Horizons is already doing a lot of shifting and moving, but it could be a whole lot worse. So that's my commentary there on that. And so Mark Rosewater continues, he says, "As you start to make competitive relevant cards, they displace the weakest of the existing cards. That's how a trading card game works. That means that not every card in the set, or even just the rares and mythics, as the commons and commons have a big role in making the limited environment work, has a competitive role. As such, we examine how they will play in more casual settings. There's no reason not to do that. And when you think of casual settings, you are remiss if you do not consider Commander. It's the 800-pound gorilla of tabletop play, aka the most played, heavily dominant format. Us considering the casual ramifications of a card we don't feel was competitively viable is not what broke the card. Us missing the interaction with a component of the game we consider broken and have stopped doing, zero-cost activations, but still lives on in older formats, is the cause. So, yeah, what happened is that Wizards is kind of, they're working at a quick pace, and they're making cards, and they're saying, oh, Nadu isn't broken with the cards we're currently printing. However, in this particular case, they missed the zero-cost activations because they no longer print those because they can lead to these types of situations. And so I'm going to just type in Shuko here. So Shuko, that's the card. Zero-cost activation. This is what Wizards no longer prints. So moving on to the next part. Stop making late changes. This is what people complain about. Whenever you see an airplane in the news, something bad has happened. It has crashed, caught on fire, or had an emergency landing, or the door fell off. And this is kind of the survivorship bias meme where the World War II, the planes came back with bullet holes, and then they tried to armor over the bullet holes, but the planes would not have come back with the bullet holes if there was a catastrophic damage. They would have just been destroyed. So that's kind of the bias there. And so why? So the question Mark says is, why do we still make planes? Because planes are pretty useful, and what's being highlighted is the worst element. The focus that can lead people to false assumptions. Magic would not be better if we stopped making last changes. A lot more broken things would get through, things caught in change, and many more cards just would not be playable. Our process of fixing things up to the last minute does lots and lots of good. Maybe it doesn't get the focus of the screw-ups, but it leads to better design. Everything needs to get play tested. My and my team's job is to take a blank piece of paper and make something that does not exist. That's not an easy thing to do. I believe play design's job is even harder. They're trying to make a balanced environment with thousands of moving pieces a year in the future. And if we're able to solve it on our end, that means the player base will crack it in 1 minute of playing with it, which makes sense because Wizards has only a finite number of employees, and the first minute that a card is available, that's 1 minute multiplied by the number of Magic players experiencing that card. And so, the first minute, we get more playtesting than they could ever possibly do with any reasonable budget. So that makes sense just with the numbers. 1 minute, by the way, is the time it takes the Magic player base to play with a set as much as we can. And yeah, exactly. That's by the math. Because they have they can spend as many hours as they want, but they have many fewer people than the total Magic audience. So there simply is not enough time in the day to test everything. So the play design team tests what they think has the highest chance of mattering. They take calculated gambles based on years of experience and test the things most likely to cause problems. Will things slip through? There's no way they can't. The system is too complex to not miss things. That does not mean we don't continually improve our processes to lower chances of mistakes, but nothing we're going to do can completely eliminate them. And Nadu is the example here. So let's click back to the Nadu screen. I'm going to go through a couple more examples just to mention them. So Shuko combines Nadu. Hogak was infamous as well for being designed for quote-unquote Commander. This ended up breaking Modern, had to get banned at the time. Oko, Thief of Crowns, this broke actually, I think, every format, even up to Vintage, because they did not consider that you would use the +1 on, I believe it's your own creatures or enemy creatures. When they play tested it, they didn't consider that. And so it had only plus abilities. It was impossible to kill. If you've ever played with this card in Draft or in Cube, you know how strong it is. Even in powered Magic cubes, it's just incredibly busted. So this was another play design mistake. And then Skull Clamp was actually one of the most famous ones. Creature gets +1/-1. They did not consider that you would clamp a 1 toughness creature to draw 2 cards over and over again. And so this was kind of like a late change. I think Jace the Mind Sculptor might have had something too. But yeah, Skull Clamp for sure. This is the most infamous one, I think, in Magic. And so moving back to the blogatog, designing Magic is difficult. Next year is my 30th year working in the game, and I think we have the most talented team we've ever had. Plus, just as we iterate on designs in a set, we iterate on design processes of making Magic. How we make Magic today is light years different, and I believe better than how we made Magic when I started. If I have seen further, it's because I stand on the shoulders of giants. And so, this is the thing. Like, Mark Rosewater and many of the people at Wizards are incredible designers. I think Mark Rosewater might be... He's, like, top 3 most influential Magic individuals like ever, pretty much. Like, Richard Garfield created the game, but I believe people like Mark Rosewater have truly made the game grow and not quite perfected it, but made it as good as it is now. And I'd rank Mark right up there with everybody else, with anybody else in terms of people who made Magic what it is. And so he knows what he's talking about here. And he says, one final thing, I've always pushed for transparency in Magic design. No one on the planet has written or spoken about it more than me. I truly believe that Magic is better as a game because its players have the insight to understand that we, the people making it, are doing. We do ask for one thing in exchange. Please treat the designers who take the time to share with you the behind-the-scenes workings of Magic design with kindness. We are all human beings with feelings. There's nothing wrong with feedback, but it can be delivered with common courtesy. So this is a really great quote, and like this should apply to everybody. I mean, it even apply to me a little bit, talking about the Commander Rules Committee, where I get salty about them not banning stuff, but like we can get upset, we can disagree, but we have to do it in a civil manner. And so players, yelling at the design team, calling them cowards, calling them, any kind of name or whatever. There's just no way that that's constructive or helpful. And so this is where I got the survivorship bias. I'm going to scroll through a couple of Twitter comments and then I'll end the video here. So Magic Data Science equals last minute design changes lead to poor designs and the survivorship bias plane. Pleasant Kenobi says, while this is amazing in context, it does muddy one of the key takeaways. The cause wasn't exclusively last minute changes. It was a pressure to change something due to Commander gameplay. In a non-Commander set, it was the input from Commander Focus. It was that the input from a Commander Focus had such weight. So Pleasant Kenobi says that, like, I think he's trying to say here that Commander Focus perhaps shouldn't have as much weight, at least in that particular Modern Horizons set. I think I sort of see what he's saying, but I also disagree. I think that, he clarifies below here. I'll just like this one. So to clarify, I would rather mistakes were made than safe designs create boring environments. I agree with that 100%. The game would die if we never took a risk. And actually, Magic takes a lot of risks, like every single year and arguably every single set. This game is morphing and changing all the time, and it's incredible what they can do with it. And so, yeah, he posts a video on his channel explaining all of this. So designing for all formats at once is so hard, but that doesn't change the criticism that the focus is often too heavily on Commander. I see where he's coming from, but Commander's the biggest format. It's the most popular format. I think casual will always dwarf competitive formats in Magic in particular, and probably every game that exists. Every game and probably every sport, casual play will dominate no matter what. So that's the backbone of any game. So Jake Brown says, people have lost their damn minds. Michael Majors is one of the greatest game designers alive. You don't fire him for a one-card mistake in the same way you don't fire Michael Jordan because he missed a free throw. And so, yeah, like this is in response to that post where they explained the Nadu situation. Patrick Sullivan says, of course, you should design for Commander. For each opponent, for example, or if you have more than 30 life, is great. What is being asked is for power level, play pattern feedback on the format where you can play Sol Ring, and the whole thing is regulated by localized Rule 0 to be ignorable. So, yeah, he's saying that you can design for Commander, but make it more specifically Commander-focused. And he says the whole thing is written like Michael made a late change, and not Michael left a meeting with Commander people and felt compelled to make a late redesign. The latter is the root issue, and no one at Wizards acknowledges this. So, yeah, I mean, it's a team effort. It's not one guy or girl or anybody making Magic. It takes everybody. So Matthias Hunt says, in software, bad code is almost always caused by management instructing developers to do things that are bad practice rather than by developers not knowing how to code properly. That's the case in a lot of jobs. Like management can cause a lot of issues. They put too much on your plate. They put too much, something that you're not able to do. The scope is just out of whack, and that can cause a lot of problems. So this could have happened here. Saffron Olive says, I think Mero's point about us seeing last-minute design changes when they go wrong is super fair. I imagine this happens a lot, and we just never know it because nothing goes wrong. And yeah, Mero says that 30 to 50 last-minute changes every set. So yeah, and we get one every 3 to 4 years. So that's like a really good hit rate. And then Saffron Olive also says, I don't really care if Nadu was designed for Commander or Modern, whether it was changed at the last minute or not. None of that stuff really matters. All I really wanted was Wizards to say they'd ban stuff quicker in the future when things go wrong, which didn't happen. And part of the reason people are upset is that Nadu was not emergency banned. It should have been emergency banned, but Wizards wanted to stick to their ban schedule. So, like, they were kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. They could have done emergency, and then people would say, oh, they didn't keep their word about the schedule, and vice versa. So, yeah, they were kind of boned either way. And then, yeah, here's the survivorship bias plane. So, yeah, again, like, what do you guys think of the Nadu situation and Mark Rosewater's blog talk post? Do you think that he explained this well? Anything that he missed? Are players right to be upset at Wizards for for designing broken cards, or would you rather see more safe designs and like never have a card bannably broken? I'm just curious how this is all going to work. I made a post on YouTube asking who people blamed, Wizards or Commander, and like 95% of people blamed Wizards for Nadu. So I think people understand that it's not the Commander players that caused Nadu to be printed the way it was, or insert any other card besides Nadu. It's Wizards attempting to appeal to a wide variety of players, and sometimes cards slip through the cracks, just like Nadu. So again, let me know in the comments what you think, and be sure to like, comment, and subscribe.